Virtue and understanding. When we were born, we were made co-creators with God. Our purpose for being in the earth is to express that co-creatorship. But how do we really do that? How do we express it? One way to do it is through virtue and understanding. But what is virtue? Let me read you this affirmation taken from A Search for God, Book 1. It says, "Let virtue and understanding be in me, for my defense is in thee, O Lord, my Redeemer. For thou hearest the prayer of the upright in heart." This affirmation implies that virtue is something good to have, something desirable. But is it really that tangible? How do you know if you have it or you don't have it? We can think of virtue as being something innate within us, an ability, not so much a possession or something to be obtained. It is rather an inherent quality in each one of us. The Casey readings refer to virtues as fruits of the Spirit and say, "If ye would know God, let thy life and thy experience be that thy deeds and thy acts are the fruits of the Spirit of truth. Against these there is no law. Love, justice, mercy, peace, brotherly love, kindness, these come from the throne of grace." The readings go on to tell us that if we meditate on these fruits of the Spirit, the very cells in our bodies become aware of the awakening of the life in their activity through the body. In so doing, our minds become aware of the living reality of the Spirit, and the Spirit of life rids us of all fear. So these fruits of the Spirit, or virtues, do exist within every soul, but are not always expressed. Virtue means having a particular type of awareness of ourselves and of others. It is a way of looking at life, a perspective that is generated from deep within us. It reveals our true worth to us, our true potential. However, our image of virtue may be totally different from this. For example, people tend to think of it as something on an intellectual level, something to be gained. You may think of all the usual terms: prudence, piety, fortitude, faith, hope, and charity. These are virtues, granted, but they don't really mean anything until they have been applied. In fact, the word virtue comes from the Latin. Vir means man, so virtue means strength or manliness. The dictionary defines it as moral excellence, or a commendable quality or trait. But we would take it a step further and say that because it comes from the word man, it means that it does come with birth, that it's something that's already present. It's not something that we have to scheme for or something we have to try for, but rather an ability that's there, waiting to be awakened, waiting to be expressed. The Casey readings say that if we would have virtue, then we must first have faith in the purity of self, in the perfection of our brother, and faith in the promises of God. So once we have faith in our own higher self, we can perform virtuously by seeing the full potential in a situation. If we're able to do this, if we're able to look past appearances and go with what feels truest in ourselves, we are able to express virtue. But what happens if we break things down intellectually and say, well, in such and such a situation, I should be acting in this particular way? Then we're putting limits on our own ability. We're putting a halt to our own co-creatorship with God. As an example, one woman had an experience that truly tested her ability to go beyond the intellect, to listen to these inner promptings of truth, and then to proceed in expressing that truth. She had just been hired to work in an accounting office and was very excited by the new prospect. Prior to being hired, she had experienced a major crisis in her life and was desperate for employment. This job seemed to be just what she needed. Several weeks after starting in her new position, the woman became aware of a certain financial practice that the company was involved in, and of which she did not approve. She spoke about it cautiously to her supervisor to see what his opinion would be. Much to her dismay, the supervisor was not only aware of the questionable practice, but condoned it as well, and even laughed about it. The woman thought at first that maybe she was overreacting and being foolish about the whole situation. But the more she thought and prayed about it, the more she realized how serious it actually was. She understood the negative impact this was having on her clients and realized that a major decision had to be made. The next day, the woman approached her boss as calmly as possible and explained that she couldn't work in a place where unethical business practices were an accepted fact. She hoped that something could be done to change the situation, or she would have to resign. Not surprisingly, she did resign, even though it went against all her logical reasoning, not to mention undermining her only source of income. But because she felt guided to act in a manner true to her inner self, she resigned from the job with a sense of peace and purposefulness. The fear of being without money was released, and within a week she found another job. As Shunryu Suzuki says in his book, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, to realize the truth is to live, to exist here and now. That is precisely what the woman did in her situation. She had an intuitive prompting, and she followed its flow. So ideally, this is what we need to do if we want to express virtue. We have to react and not be as concerned about the consequences as we would be if we were following a logical approach to a situation. This is not to say that we should never be logical. There are situations in which it is appropriate to approach things from a rational perspective. But in relation to virtue, it's important to incorporate the insights which come as an intuitive process. If we follow this intuitive approach to situations, we are living in the present. We are acknowledging virtue in ourselves and others, and we help others to express themselves in more complete, creative, and harmonious ways. So it works not just for us, but for other people as well. The readings say that virtue connects us with God, with what's highest in ourselves. So we have to actively make choices which strengthen that connection. One quote in particular tells us that we cannot live only a passive life, but rather a positive life. For it is not what one knows that counts, but rather what one does about what one knows. For ye grow in grace, and in knowledge, and in understanding, as ye apply that in thine experience that makes the path straight, that keeps upon the way that is constructive in the experience. This is another way to gauge virtue, or a way to see if you are acting appropriately. How constructive are your actions? Is their effect positive, or do they have a negative effect? Although these questions seem simple, they provide a powerful way of seeing the extent to which virtue is present in our lives. It's important also to practice virtue without thinking of a reward. In the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, which was mentioned earlier, Suzuki discusses the value of regular meditation, which he calls zazen. And he writes, "If you think you will get something from practicing zazen, already you are involved in impure practice. When you practice zazen, just practice zazen. If enlightenment comes, it just comes. We should not be attached to the attainment." So here we see that we need to detach ourselves from efforts. If virtue is innate within us, then we have to have faith that it will work. And as the readings say, know in what thou hast believed, and where thy faith has been placed. If we have faith in our own integrity and act on it, then everything will proceed in its proper course, and nothing will divert it. Appreciation of each moment of our lives is the key to practicing this lesson, living in the now, in the moment. It may help to think of virtues as being stepping stones or tools that lead us to this full appreciation of the present moment. In a dictionary on the Catholic Bible, it says that the three theological virtues are faith, hope, and charity, and that these unite the soul to God through Christ. Faith empowers the intellect and the will to accept the Word of God. Hope inclines the will to have confidence that God is there, that God gives eternal life. Charity empowers the will to love God Himself, to love oneself, and one's neighbor for the sake of God. Love gives value to these acts, and it unites one to God most perfectly. This connection is what we are striving for, to renew the bond that may have been broken at some point. By applying what we know to be positive and constructive, we are led to understanding. The readings say, "By the works ye shall know them, as by their fruits. For as virtue is a fruit of faith, so does the understanding come, as the full-grown seed ready for planting." In other words, virtue is the reward of faith, and understanding is the reward of virtue. We can liken understanding to the act of standing at the bottom of a long stairway. As we move upwards, each step brings us nearer to the floor above. Gradually, we perceive a clearer picture of what lies ahead. And then, boom! We don't really know which step gives us the whole picture, but there it is, right in front of us and crystal clear. That spark of heightened awareness is understanding. We attract these gifts of understanding to ourselves because of our awareness of the virtue that exists all around us and within us, and because we have applied it in everyday situations. So in a sense, when we achieve understanding, we feel as if we've completed another flight of stairs, and we're not even out of breath. In fact, we feel so full of energy that we're anxious to move on and see what miracles the next floor has to offer. Understanding builds upon itself in this way. The more we understand, the more aware we become, and the more virtuous we can be. So it goes full circle, because virtue and understanding are intertwined. It's difficult to say where one begins and the other leaves off. But once we do understand, then practical insight is inevitable. Usually these insights come as a surprise to us. We don't really expect them. However, to grasp what the readings mean by understanding, we must avoid the misconception that knowledge and understanding are synonymous. These are not identical. It's possible to have a great deal of knowledge, but still not understand something. We might think of it in this way. Knowledge is hearing about something on a very superficial level. Virtue is seeing something through the deep spiritual qualities within each soul. Understanding is the actual experiencing of it. So only with application of knowledge does experience lead to understanding. For example, we're on the right track to understanding when we are able to see ourselves as other people see us, and when we're able to look at other people without criticism, without judgment. This is purity in our action, in mind, in soul and body. So in a sense, virtue allows us to view things in a non-critical way. Rather, we see what's good in a situation, in a person. We look beyond the surface and see what is deeper there. This leads us to understand that person, that situation, and it frees us. It releases us to rise above circumstances and to be back in our rightful place as co-creators with God. Let's take time now to inwardly experience these ideas about virtue and understanding. Through images and a guided reverie, you can directly see how virtue leads to understanding and changes even the most difficult of life situations. Jesus said that in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must become like little children. Perhaps when he said this, he was referring to that quality that we are all born with, the acceptance of our oneness with God. Children have that natural confidence in their own original nature, so they feel their closeness to creation, and they allow the beauty of life to envelop them. So let's imagine for a few minutes that we are like children again, that we have that youthful innocence that allows us to be who we really are. Sit back and relax. Close your eyes and allow yourself to breathe deeply. And notice how as you inhale, your breath feels cool. As you exhale, your breath feels warm. With each inhalation, you feel a sense of peace and calmness, and a sense of forgiveness for anyone who has ever hurt you. With each exhalation, you rid yourself of anger, tension, or any anxiety that might be there. You breathe in a joyous energy, a renewed faith in the purity of your own soul, of your own motivation. With each breath, feel yourself becoming younger. Go back in time and feel the freedom of youth. Your arms and legs feel weightless, and visualize yourself lying in a soft green patch of grass. Smell the fresh scents around you, and imagine yourself gazing wide-eyed at the beautiful blue sky. Each moment of this warm day is a part of you, and you feel transformed. When you see yourself beginning to stand up, realize you have that childlike feeling again. There's a soft breeze blowing through your hair, and you run like the wind up the hill until you reach a large tree. Touch the bark and examine it thoroughly, feeling the roughness and smelling the earthy aroma. Just on the other side of the hill is a big white house. As you walk up to the wide door, your hand turns the shiny gold doorknob. There's a stairway inside, and you know that there are some people that you need to see up the stairs. People who will help you understand your life better. So up you go, and your interest builds. With each step, you feel vital and alive. You come closer and closer to an understanding of what your life is about. Reaching the top step, you see 3 doors waiting to be opened. You perceive everything in an open, childlike manner. You approach the first door. When you open it all the way, you see someone from your current life with whom you are having difficulty. Remember a recent incident with this person which you found to be distressing. Perhaps you felt that this person responded to the incident in a less than virtuous way. Now step back for a few moments and try to see the situation from that person's viewpoint. Remember that everyone has reasons for doing what he or she does. Realize that this person's dedication to a particular view of life could be worthy of your respect, even though you might strongly disagree with the methods being used. Remember to look at this situation and this person from an objective, childlike perspective. Look for the positive aspects of the incident. Ask yourself what positive motivation this person may have. Which of this person's actions do you see as being true to the moment? What response seemed to be most genuine? See this person's virtue. Hold attention on that quality about this person that you're able to respect, and hold that positive image of the person in your mind for a moment. Now move on to the second door. Once again, visualize someone with whom you've had great difficulty. This time, however, it's someone from your past. You don't interact with the person directly anymore, but you still hold a resentment or irritation with them. Look right away for the virtue in that person. What was the underlying motivation for what that person did, even if it didn't turn out well? Imagine yourself seeing it all with a child's fresh eyes. What is true and virtuous in this person's response? Retain that positive image once more. As you open the third door, see yourself and one of the two people from the other scenes. But this is a whole new situation. This meeting seems to be especially fruitful and enjoyable. What elements make this experience special? See the other person acting in an open and honest way. Feel yourself responding from deep within, instead of reacting with negative patterns from the past. Examine this new situation thoroughly and see what is constructive and positive in this moment. As you are able to do this, you have taken a step toward seeing virtue in all things, and by doing so, you have opened the doors to understanding. Now slowly, begin to bring your attention back, first to your breathing, and now to your body present in the room. And slowly, open your eyes. Perhaps we can best summarize what the Casey readings teach us about virtue and understanding by closing with the following reading. Feed then upon the fruits of the Spirit: love, hope, joy, mercy, long-suffering, brotherly love, and the contact, the growth, will be seen. And within the consciousness of the soul will the awareness come of the God in